Hi everyone, I'm Daniel Newman, Principal Analyst and Founder at Futurum Research, and I'm excited today to bring to you this webcast where we're going to talk a little bit about a partnership between Siemens and SAS in the IoT space, and we're also going to talk about overall what's going on in IoT, and I've got some great guests here joining me today. Jason, why don't you kick off and introduce yourself to everybody out there?
Hi Daniel, I'm Jason Mann. I lead our IoT division here at SAS.
Hi, I'm Oscar Möbert. I'm head of Digital Insight Portfolio from Siemens Mainz.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have both of you join me here today. As an industry analyst, IoT has been a space I've been paying attention to for a long time. It's not brand new, although sometimes based on all the commentaries and punditry out there, you would think IoT is just this brand new thing. But it really has started to mature, and it's really started to hit the next level. And of course, partnerships like that between Siemens and SAS are an indicator of just how far it's come. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but I'd like to get some perspective from both of you. So Oscar, I'm going to start off with you. Siemens is known as one of the world's most it's best known as an industrial technology company. In IoT, it's been a popular topic over the last few years. But really, while we are in our infancy in many ways and starting to see adoption at scale, kind of like what I talked about earlier. And this is impacting the implementation and adoption of IoT. I'd like to have you talk a little bit about how you and, of course, Siemens sees IoT analytics, it's the space, and what's really happened over the last 12 to 24 months.
So the last 12 to 24 months have been really exciting. So we see that the industry is in uncertain times. So actually our customers and our partners try to differentiate their products, try to increase performance, actually to stay ahead in the competition. On the other hand, we see that data is becoming the new currency of our industry. So actually it's really to untap what is in data and learn what is happening, let's say, on the shop floor level. And actually data and using the data for meaningful insights is really the key to differentiate. And actually you need certain capabilities to do this. And actually these capabilities are exactly in the field of what you as SAS is bringing to the world and what we as Siemens can bring to the world. So actually one of the biggest challenges is, of course, first to get to the data. And actually we saw over the last times that more and more customers are trying to connect their devices, actually integrating those devices and connecting it to the cloud and getting, let's say, in an efficient way, insights. However, not everybody has come to a situation where those expectations have been met. However, if you start now, you can really stay ahead of the competition, and that's the key here.
It was such a rich history. This had to be something that, whether Siemens had been planning or not, and of course it was planning it, but these companies had to have been really kind of coming to Siemens, really looking for guidance from a company with so much depth and experience in industrial space. Have you guys seen and heard a lot from those clients that you've been serving for a long time, really coming to you looking for these kinds of solutions?
So what you see that over the last 24 months, the solutions have become much more mature. So actually, when we look 24 months back, most of our customers have been in early POC phases. Actually, what we see, and we did a joint analysis on that, is that many customers are, let's say, exploring the technology, what is going on and how this technology can be deployed in an efficient manner to get sense out of the data. However, if you run through those POCs, you have to have a clear vision of where you want to go from a business problem point of view. And actually, that's probably one thing which is still lacking in our industry, that it's not always being made clear from the beginning on where you want to go, if you want to increase production, if you want to attack more the production yield, if you want to increase your product by yourself. And actually, that's, I think, something what we see. On the other hand, we see that cloud is, of course, in everybody's mouth. However, there's still some reluctancy in terms of adoption to the cloud, and there are many reasons to that. And one reason is, of course, that the devices in the field are sending a tremendous amount of data to the cloud. And on the other hand, you very often need insights which are, let's say, very prompt, very timely. And actually, to make this efficient and to deploy those solutions in an efficient manner is quite challenging.
Yeah, so you're trying to get it fast, but concurrently, so as we've talked so much about the edge and IoT, you also have this volume challenge. So you want it quickly for real time to be able to do processing and make decisions, but concurrently you've got this mass of data problem, and a lot of people don't realize, but data in the cloud adoption as a whole is still in fairly early days. You know, the numbers say 20-25% of apps have moved to the cloud. And the challenge you mentioned is one of those challenges that's really been driving that is too much data. So then you hear this growth of the edge, and the growth of the edge is happening, but now you have to decide what data is going to go back. And then, of course, security lingers. But I really liked your comment about, you know, how much has changed in 2 years. Because in the beginning, when I sort of prompted this discussion, I'm like, well, the IoT is not really that new, because it really isn't that new. But concurrently, it has been in sort of this long phase of being in POC. It's long phase of like everybody's trying to get to a certain level, but it hasn't necessarily crossed that chasm yet to being adopted at mass. So a lot of great points. I want to bounce over to Jason real quick. Jason, you know, SAS they're a pioneer when it comes to analytics, known as the creator of event stream processing, which has evolved into what most are calling now real-time analytics. Manufacturing and industrial, though, have really only recently become a huge focus with SAS IoT. Right. Talk a little bit about what drove SAS into that space, and this happened a few years ago. So now that you've been in this space for a while, what kind of observations have you made, and maybe what's been surprising to you and your team?
Yeah, so Daniel, as you mentioned, while the streaming aspect and the engagement with industrial sectors has been somewhat recent with our release of event stream processing into the market, our engagement with those industries have been for most of our 44-year history. And the change really has been about that latency of decisioning, the idea that no longer can you wait for that full cycle of data creation, move it through a network, move it into a persistent environment. Certainly the cloud, as you mentioned, is a big landing space for that. Then some iteration, generate some insight, and then respond, right? That latency doesn't work in today's market, and oftentimes you have to make a decision at the origin of data, at the time that the data is being created. So yes, that's been a big change that we've seen over the last 18 to 24 months is continued adoption. Oscar had talked about the idea of the POC, and absolutely we're seeing that transition and that maturity with respect to the companies that at one time were creating what was similar to an academic exercise, right? Some smart people applied to a particular problem, but the development of that POC didn't intend deployment into an operational environment. So that's been certainly an area of focus for SAS over those 18 to 24 months that you speak of, helping provide that journey for our customers to understand the problem, but then translate that to outcomes and how that gets deployed into those operational infrastructures. So many of the industries, especially in our combined markets that we're targeting, are oftentimes old, right? The installed base, the brownfield installations are 50, 75, 100 years old in some cases with some of the lifespan of the equipment. And being able to not be a displacement technology and incorporate additional value in that space has been another focus for us, and will continue to drive our investment going forward.
So talk a little more about real time, because I mentioned event stream processing, real-time analytics, and there's been a lot of push towards that. And as much as we like to think a lot of analytics are real time, actually in business, a lot of analytics are not real time.
Usually not, yes.
Right, and so we've gotten used to real time on other things, real time weather, real time stock data, but in terms of business decisioning, most data takes some processing. It works through a queue, it's updated on a certain cadence, it's not in real time. But when it's come to this space, and as SAS has matured in IoT, how important has that capability been in terms of engaging customers and creating confidence?
Right. I really think it's that last mile, and it's one of the last levers that are out there and available for our customers to really start to move the lever on bottom line efficiency, and in many cases even start to look at some opportunities for top line growth. So the goal has always been to let's remove the human from some of the determination of next steps. And what we're finding with the compute power that is now available at the edge, you can do that, as I mentioned, at the source of data. So it opens up a whole new spectrum of ways to engage your processes. So the idea of autonomous interaction comes into play. The idea that we're not waiting on an engineer to evaluate the performance of the equipment or wait until delivery into a dashboard to make adjustments. You can have the data drive the determination of if it's on standard or at performance metrics, and then actually engage with the machine to make the changes necessary to bring it back into compliance where required. So all of that happening at near real time and without the loop of engagement with a human provides a reduced timeline for correction of those errors, which can result in quality issues at the end-of-line inspection, for example.
And you subtly sort of implicated some next-gen technologies, whether it be AI. You start talking about how things in real time can start to happen, right? That's where opportunities for ML and AI really come into place. Automation, workflow automations come into place, because doing it in real time and then being able to set up those automations, because real-time data is great, but being able to act upon real-time data means something or someone needs to be literally at the command center. And a lot of times now it's not a person anymore. It might be for certain red alerts and alarms in a factory, but a lot of times it's about how do you set an algorithm in place that can identify a problem and create a smoothing to make sure that the business continues running, continuity stays, but it's done, like I said, in that near real time.
Yeah, and you're starting to see some interesting technologies get applied. So for the history of manufacturing, the focus has been on vibration or audio as early indicators to potential issues. But now you're starting to see the introduction of video into that spectrum as well. And as those edge devices, either those that are tracking the audio or the vibration itself, has expanded compute, you then have the option to start to act on those states that are being defined through the evaluation of the overall process. So it's an exciting area for us, one that we continue to invest in, especially as you see these new adoptions get layered on top of that brownfield deployment that I talked about earlier.
Absolutely. Both of you gentlemen kind of referenced either directly or indirectly use cases. As an analyst, I spend a lot of time looking at use cases. Often for new technology. Industrial IoT, we've been hearing about predictive maintenance. We've heard a little bit about workforce optimization. Let me ask you this, and Oscar, I'll start with you. Have those use cases have they started to realize their potential? How fast are we starting to see the scale? So you both mentioned proof of concept. Are we moving from proof of concept to operationalize? And of course, if you could, please, for everyone out there, share any stories, whether direct or customer references or at least industry examples.
Yeah, so actually that's a great question. And actually use cases and having concrete use cases in the field which really scale are probably the most important thing which we have to have, and which also shows the power of our joint partnership. And actually one of the use cases is in the electronics manufacturing. Yeah? Just imagine you have a factory where you have at least 50 production lines and you have variants which is going into the hundreds. And actually what you have there, of course, that you produce thousands of devices. And actually quality control is an important issue. And actually that's a really, really nice example, because quality control is always about making prompt decisions. So prompt, and you are referring to real time, means that I have to take a decision within 10 seconds. On the other hand, you have tremendous amounts of data. And actually, we have an example which is really, really nice, because there you monitor about 500 parameters, and you do some quality control for PCB manufacturing. And actually what you do there is that you decide if this PCB has to be controlled in a really, really expensive X-ray control unit or not. And actually what we have done there, we have built a model which is analyzing thousands of parameters, and based on this statistical model, using our joint technologies, we can really bring this value to the customer and to the field, and reduce production costs and improve efficiency. And actually, that's also a nice example because it shows that you need to have edge capabilities where you need these prompt decisions. On the other hand, there you really need to train the model. And actually that's something you better do on the cloud. And actually also the management of the model by itself and retraining it, that is better done from a cloud point of view. And there we see, let's say, these kind of references and this kind of use cases really start scaling in the field, yeah? Where we see that we have the right technology in place and that customers start to understand what this means for the industry. And that's just one of many use cases which we see.
I like how you
right
pulled
now.
it together too. You pulled together a little bit of training, a little bit of modeling, a little bit of real time. Jason, we've had many conversations over the years. I'm sure you are not short of examples. I'd love to hear a few from the SaaS side before I sort of round up and take it back to that SaaS-Siemens partnership.
You know, first to start with some of the points that Oscar had made, you really have a couple of classes of problems that are there when we're talking about generating models. Those that are leveraging some of the AI or machine learning principles that are leveraging the data itself to determine what the standard or what the target should be. In those cases, you can deploy the model and the data, drives the outcome. And those are a little easier for deployment, a little more rapid deployment, a little closer to some of the physical models that get put in place sometimes. And then there's that other spectrum where, in fact, you are using some persistent data, normally large data sets. You're normally looking for a state where you're training in that persistent environment, and then you deploy the scoring into the edge device. In that case, it is also being affected by the IoT market in that extra compute allows the scoring on larger data sets to occur. So given those two foundations of types of problems, you look at how it's now getting applied. So Oscar had talked about the complexities within the manufacturing environment, and certainly huge opportunity there as well. But we see that shared with other industries, industries like transportation, rail specifically within trucking and fleet management, where now the complexity exponentially goes up. You have the concept of the asset and all the information that the asset is generating. But now you have the operator, which has direct influence over many of those operating parameters. So you see scenarios to where the true importance, the lever that helps the business is the idea of uptime. But perhaps more importantly is the idea of planned downtime. So let's get the truck in when it has the least impact to business operations. You also see a different mindset. While the streaming data is quite critical, what you do with the data is more important to the business. So in the case that you hear about the catastrophic failures, it's about a controlled shutdown. But the thing that's much more in the norm is the idea of being able to respond to an alert. And if you think about the scale that you're seeing in this space, hundreds of thousands of trucks that are generating tens of thousands of faults every single day, being able to sort through those and understand what to do, which ones are critical, the timeline between the fault occurring, determining whether it's important, and then assigning a ticket can be critical. And when you start that process with the streaming data, it can be reduced into seconds versus the extended timeline that's created today. And that allows a couple of things to occur. The ticket's assigned, tracking is established, but in parallel, you can also start an activity where a business analyst may be trying to determine the origin of the problem and where it applies. Is it specific to that asset? Is it specific to that asset in a particular region? Or is the impact to the entire fleet? All of that drives a different response.
Yeah, I fundamentally believe there will be new models of using data that companies aren't even aware of that are going to happen as a byproduct, first of all. So they start with a proof of concept, a certain idea. As all the analytics start pouring in, companies are going to identify new ways to monetize these projects, but also new possibilities for everything from products and services to just being more efficient and using what they're deploying. Planes, trains, and automobiles. So you mentioned the trains. I think everything that's moving is going to become a huge opportunity for edge and IoT. And I think it's really important, though, that there is that architecture that incorporates all of the capabilities of long tenures of industrial manufacturing with extremely nimble, cloud-based software that can come together, which brings me to the last topic here, right? the partnership. As an industry analyst, that's one of the things I really pay attention to is these kinds of partnerships that are created. And Siemens and SAS really caught my attention. Industrial tech companies have long been, I would say remiss to partner with more traditional IT software and vice versa. So it's not an accountability thing, but with IT and OT divide, there seems to be some barriers. We did research on this a while ago. You remember we found that. But really the two groups are finding that need to converge. And I only imagine that there's going to be more and more of these partnerships. But for both of you, and Jason, I'll let you start off on this one. Talk about the journey to becoming partners and what made you feel that this was a great fit. And talk about the partnership evolving into 2020. And obviously, I want to hear from both of you on both sides.
Sure. So I'll start with just the fact that it's not often that you have a company such as Siemens, 150 plus years old, SAS, 44. We just passed our 44th year anniversary. Companies that have been in business for that long, targeting similar markets that don't have significant overlap in the value that they're bringing to bear. So if you look at Siemens with the long history of being a leader in industrial manufacturing, and SAS focused on value from analytics, it was a great opportunity to align those two areas of expertise to expand the value of both companies to their customers. Finally, early on, as we started to focus on the IoT market, it became evident that while we're really proud of analytics, it takes a broader footprint, right, to deliver that final value to the end customer. And the idea of being able to incorporate those analytical insights into a broader ecosystem has been critical, where the domain and the installed base and that expertise exists. So, as we looked at the opportunities for a combined partnership, there really weren't a lot of hurdles, and where we were able to identify those, we moved past them quite rapidly.
Yeah, it's really rare, and you pointed that out in the age of tech. Now, I say that we've hit this kind of age of peak competition, where you hear partnerships being announced by companies almost every day that have significant overlap, and you're like, how does that work? How are these two companies partnering? But obviously they have a certain white space that both find enough value in the partnership that they're willing to oversee. This fit really did seem great with the software, analytics, real time, and Siemens having such a rich and capable and well-regarded history in industrial, and industrial is such a huge opportunity. And then concurrently, the company was going down the path of a software as a service, cloud-based offering, which is the product that, Oscar, you're responsible in MindSphere. Tell everyone a little bit about what is MindSphere, because we've been talking a lot about the partnership, but we haven't talked a lot about the product.
So what is MindSphere? So MindSphere is a platform which provides a rich set of capabilities, and that on the connectivity side, on the service side, and of course also on the solution side. So let's have first a look on the connectivity side. So MindSphere provides a rich set of connectivity options. Let it be hardware option, let it be an API, let it be enterprise-ready integration options. If we look on the services which we deliver, actually there it comes, there we have a rich set of analytic capabilities, and one of those capabilities is really the capability SAS brings into our ecosystem. On the other hand, we are making it really easy to develop applications easily and fast, including all the management of an application, which is normally really a complex thing. And then on the top level, we have a rich set of ready-made solutions and applications, having real-time capabilities, having all the capabilities event streaming processing brings with it. Yeah, that's a unique strength of our partnership. And if I look into the future, actually I have to say that we have to, and we will of course, extend our partnership in that space, as analytic capabilities will become even more important the more adoption we see on the cloud and on the edge side. And Siemens is heavily committed to extending and investing into our industrial edge platform, and of course bringing all the capabilities which we have into that. And that's just a unique strength which we bring together.
Yeah, it sounds really promising, and it's been really fun to have the chance to have this discussion, to hear about the use cases, to kind of get a little bit of how each company arrived here, and then ultimately how you've both come together. For everyone out there that's been watching this, by the way, there's a tremendous white paper that was done in partnership between SAS and Siemens. And we're going to go ahead and throw that up there now. If you want to have a look at this, please go to the URL, check out this paper, download it. A lot to learn there. Jason Mann, thank you so much. Oscar, really appreciate having you here today on the set to talk to me and let me provide a little analysis and join into the conversation. The future is bright for IoT. This partnership seems to have a lot of potential. I'm encouraged to continue to track it, to follow it, and to watch. And hopefully in a year or so, we'll sit back down together. We'll hear about that next wave of use cases, and we'll hear these POCs really becoming big operational deployments of IoT, edge, cloud, AI, software. Exciting stuff for everyone. I want to thank you very much for attending, joining us in this webcast today. We'll see you soon.